Hello and welcome to the Brains podcast with me, your host, Mihal. And on today's show, I am joined by Eldin Bašić. We're going to talk about sales, high-level client relationships, and what it takes to compete in the luxury market. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you, Mihal. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I'm excited for this conversation. I want to start way at the beginning. I think the yacht charter industry is one of those that people know, well, they're curious about and they want to know more, including me, but they don't fully understand what it takes from the outside. For someone completely new to this, me, what is yacht charter and how does the process typically work from a client's first inquiry to stepping on board for their experience?
Very happy to answer that, and I hope I will be able to clarify this to anybody who doesn't really know yet is interested to find out. In general, yacht charter is very similar to rent a car. You basically rent a boat for a certain period of time in a specific location. Now, most of the clients who are looking to charter yachts, they're usually seasoned sailors, qualified and experienced people who know what they want. They are living somewhere, and in order to experience another destination, they want a equal or similar or identical boat that they own or sail regularly somewhere else, and they are comfortable, capable to do so. So basically, they know what they want. They ask for a specific type of a boat or range of boats in a specific location. For example, somebody living in Stockholm, Sweden, they might say, oh, I want to go this year to Italy and experience the Amalfi Coast. And if they sail on a 50-foot sailing boat, they're looking for a similarly sized 50-foot sailing boat to sail. That boat might cost between, I don't know, 3,000 and 10,000 euro a week, depending on the season, depending on the age, depending on the equipment, and they will basically get a contract, an offer, a contract, sign, pay, and when the time comes, they will be sailing. It's similarly, as I said, with a car, they pick up their boat in a specific location, marina, office, and so on.
Okay.
The same applies to any smaller boat or a luxury boat or a super yacht. Basically, yacht charter is renting a boat for either a day or a week, or at times even up to 18 months. We have clients who sail across the world, the oceans for seasons and with their family and so on. Just one client returned recently with 2 children. They started in September in Italy and they finished in St. Martin in 16th of April.
Now, I think hearing what you've just said, people are now wondering, well, where is off limits or where can I go? From your perspective and the people you work with, where would you say are the most popular destinations that people tend to go and what makes them so appealing to the clients?
Well, obviously, Mediterranean and the Caribbean are the giants of sailing destinations. Mediterranean in the summer and the Caribbean in the winter. That said, you have a lot of people who want to experience Baltic Sea in July and August. Also, you have a lot of people who want to experience remote tropical destinations such as Seychelles or South Pacific in other periods of the time. Where the Caribbean might be more popular during the winter season and so on. But majority of clients sail in the summer in the Mediterranean. You can say anywhere between Balearics in Spain, across Italy and south of France, to Turkey and Greece and Adriatic, Croatia, Montenegro. And then in the winter, they sail between Grenadines in the south and British Virgin Islands or Virgin Islands in the north. And, it depends on the client, on the season, on the year, on what the plans are, how long will they sail, what boats they will take, what itinerary they will consume, and so on. And typical client will say, what can you offer to us for Christmas 2026, starting 25th of December and ending on, let's say, 7th of January, so that they can experience New Year? And we would tell them, okay, why don't you start in somewhere like Grenada, enjoy barefoot luxury for the first few days, and have your Christmas party within the family, and then sail towards St. Bart's for the biggest party in the yachting world for New Year. And then they might finish afterwards in Virgin Islands or maybe Antigua if they're British, to experience a bit of British culture, let's say like that. That would be a perfect one-way itinerary for 2 weeks in the most popular season in the Caribbean. In the Mediterranean, some people might just go 1 week to Dubrovnik in Croatia, or 1 week around Athens to Mykonos, one way. Other people might say, we want to experience Monaco Grand Prix and then sail 10 or 12 weeks across the Mediterranean, south of France, Italy, and finish somewhere in, let's say, in Corfu in Greece. So they experience the major event, and then they sail with their family in a relaxing manner, and then they finish somewhere in a spectacular location, let's say Corfu or island of Capri or Dubrovnik, as a kind of end of the season kind of highlight.
Sounds incredible. Sounds really, really amazing. And speaking of clients, I can imagine they come to you with many different expectations depending on what they want. It could be adventure, it could be luxury, it could be like maybe some privacy or something else. What things do clients typically look for when they're booking a yacht charter experience?
There is obviously a bit of a shift at the moment, because up to now, or up to recently, most clients were kind of regular sailors. For example, a Swiss client who races a boat in one of the Swiss lakes. He prefers a certain type of a boat or a brand like Hanse. No? And when they race, whatever they race at home on their own boat, they then charter a Hanse 575 or 588, whatever the latest model is, wherever they can get it. They don't necessarily go to Croatia this year. They go where the boat is available. These are the sort of the typical old-fashioned clients. They are experienced, they race throughout the year, and they go on a sailing holiday for 2 or 3 weeks during the summer. They might also go for a week or two during the winter, but not everybody does that. Now, there is a shift, though, in the latest kind of, let's say, not decade, but maybe last 2 or 3 years. Apart from these experienced sailors, you have new families joining sailing who want to sail for, like I mentioned, for months and months on end. They take the kids off school, they sell their house, they put everything into some kind of new lifestyle, and boat or charter of a boat, sometimes owning the boat, is part of it. But the latest shift is kind of this lifestyle. People don't necessarily just want to rent a boat for a holiday. They want to experience the lifestyle. One friend said, I want to live 1,000 lives during my life. And what he does, for example, he goes to Seville, hires the best flamenco dancing instructor there, and he lives for a month in Seville and lives flamenco lifestyle. And that's one of his 1,000 lives, So people like that, they want to experience sailing, and they either working from home, so they're saying, now I'm going to work from the boat, or they want to experience this kind of sabbatical sailing experience for many weeks or months, or they just want to experience this kind of like new scenery every day where you don't pack, but you are changing the view. So you constantly, so every morning you wake up to something new, and they just want this kind of seamless lifestyle, either if they do it themselves as qualified skippers and take their family, or if they have maybe higher budget, they bring every week new family member or new friends. So they rent a boat for, let's say, 15 weeks, whatever the size that is. It might be 50 foot, it might be 200 foot, depending on the budget. Is the budget 10,000 a week, or is it 200,000 a week? They then bring 1 week their sister, and then the next week their brother, and then the week after that their grandparents, and then after that for 2 weeks they sail on their own. So every 10 weeks is different, and then they change the location, and they experienced half of the Mediterranean that way.
Yeah. Incredible. I'm happy that you touched upon that idea that it's not just this, what I imagine people to think, a 1 week luxury holiday. It can go on months, it can go on weeks. And I'm curious to ask you, why or what do you think is driving this shift, this change of people going for longer periods of time? Or, you touched upon people just wanting to wake up in different spaces. But
yeah, well, obviously for every single person is different. Everybody has got their own. You don't really, we as brokers, we don't necessarily get involved into nitty-gritty of private decisions. We're trying to satisfy people demands for the boat, for itinerary, for duration, for budget. And so now if we start asking them questions, why, and so on, that would be, interrupting their privacy, and we don't necessarily do that. However, reading details from outside would mean that people sometimes are just like in the need of change, or sometimes they consciously decide I want to try something new, or sometimes they just say, okay, this year I can afford it. I may never be able to do it again, so I better do it this year. We just had an inquiry yesterday for somebody who says, I can do 8 weeks sabbatical in 2027, and I might never be able to do it before or after. So please, 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 what can you offer? July and August, peak of the season, people worry because most, let's say 95% of the owners or boat owners of charter boats will not consider giving somebody a boat away for a week or two longer than necessary, because they want the boat under constant control, always serviced, always managed. Sending the boat for 2 or 3 weeks, let alone 2 or 3 months away, cross-country sailing or different destinations, so that 95% of boat owners won't do it. So this is where we as brokers need to have the insight and knowledge and capacity and ability, and are ready to search and work for the client, because I would say that I am the leading broker in the world for long-term charters, cross-country sailings, transatlantic crossings. 99% of other brokers won't do it, or they will not bother doing it, or they will not know how to do it. This is where I come in with, by chance, where I had a client who wanted to sail from England, Southampton, to Australia, like 18 years ago. And I was like, how do you want to do it? So I learned from the client. He said, don't worry, I will do it. Help me find the boat and help me organize it. And I was like, okay, I will do it. So we met. I bought him a bottle of Bosnian wine, of high quality wine, by the way. And they loved it. And we met in Southampton. They picked up their 48-foot sailing boat, and they sailed, I can't remember, I think it was 9 months that they sailed from across, I don't know, French West Coast down to Canaries, across the Atlantic, through Panama Canal, and then their autopilot broke 200 miles off Panama's coast. So they had to come back for 200 miles on a boat, which is weeks or days at least. And then they repaired it, and when they set off, the autopilot died again. And they had 2 teenage daughters. One was 13, the other one was 15, less than 16. A couple and 2 daughters. So they sailed the whole Southern Pacific without autopilot in 2009.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you obviously have to keep in touch. You have to kind of not necessarily manage, because they manage the boat. But as a broker, you are there to answer a call at 2 o'clock in the morning if they need something, whatever that is, just a call, a message, or nothing, I'm here. And then they crossed without, I mean, I don't know if people understand this. Sailors will understand this. But sailing without autopilot nowadays is no. And that means even for 1 hour when you sail down the coastline in a Riviera, because you just switch autopilot and drink wine or talk to friends, and then look occasionally over the shoulder to see what's happening. That's when you sail on your own, bareboat. Obviously, when you have the crew and the captain, they manage that on their own. But sailing, I don't know, more than a month or 2 months without autopilot is another level with 2 teenage kids.
Wow. And they're there to tell the story.
And they're still there, yeah. They just sold their second boat, because they bought, after that 48-footer, which they had up to 2015, they had a 53-footer for another few years, due for 530. They just sold it, I think, last year.
I want to know, because it's interesting for me that it's kind of like there's trends when it comes to travel, and I'm curious to know from your perspective, when it comes to destinations, when it comes to experiences, maybe client preferences or the experiences that people want on board, what trends have you noticed shift, let's say, in the past 5 to 10 years?
In terms of yacht charter, there's a definite shift out. It's a bit of luxury lifestyle or innovative experiences. For example, we offer a 50-foot private catamaran in Croatia, which costs €2,000 per week per person. And you get everything there, like yoga instruction, Pilates instructions, breathwork instructions, meditations, full menu, hostess service, chefs, cooking, skipper makes a wonderful, very specialized itinerary, which 98% of other skippers wouldn't really kind of want to explore. And this is kind of avoiding crowds, avoiding kind of busy ports. You don't necessarily want to spend the night where the I don't know, busy shipping lines are and so on. You want to be somewhere unique, experience, I don't know, cinematic background, and maybe have an open air cinema on board. And many luxury boats now have their own kind of setup, outdoor setup for cinema. Sometimes you can even watch on the beach, like a big screen. As you know, the LCD or whatever monitors now have developed so that you can have a huge screens, you pack them up or roll them out as a projection, and experiencing kind of this private cinema with only 10 people that you've chosen to be, and sail every day somewhere else and have a background, whatever you choose to be, in a nice weather. And these are the experiences that people are looking for. They don't necessarily just want to go sailing and then visit all these hot spots. They want to go sailing and keep private, stay away, relax, enjoy. And if somebody's there to manage that in a way, as I said, with all these instructions of mind development, self-development, health development, healthier eating and so on, this all combines into yacht charter, because you can't get that into villa or a hotel in a full privacy as you can get it on a boat. The yacht charter is really the best type of a holiday in the world you can have. It has to be managed properly, though. And that's where the broker comes in a way. Unless you are a boat owner yourself who decides, oh, I have a passion for boats, I want to own the boat, and then you kind of do what you want and desire and demand of your own employees and crew to deliver.
Sounds like the dream. That cinema on the beach, the cinema with your 10 friends, sounds great. I wanted to ask though, like anything, there's always misconceptions, and I feel like yacht charter is going to be no exception. What have you found to be one of the biggest misconceptions out there about yacht charting before people actually experience it for themselves?
I think most of people worry about the costs. At an entry level where the budget is low, people just, they can just check the hotel room and, plan their own trip, and they're thinking that they're saving money by sleeping around in places that are close to tourist location that they want to visit. And if they do that individually, that's fine. That's what we all do. But if you have a group of people, quite often yacht charter can be cheaper than a hotel. Yeah, because when you combine a group of 8 or 10 people, you will be surprised that yacht charter can come out cheaper than even a luxury hotel. Yeah, so that's one of the misconceptions. The other one might be talking about a higher budget and luxury. People maybe worry about spending too much money on this. Quite a lot of people are comparing, like, oh, I would like to buy because I don't really want to spend money on charter. And then I have clients calling me after a year, oh my God, we bought a yacht instead of charter. Now we can't sell it. And it's like, was it easier to spend 30,000 euro for 3 months sailing than buy a boat for 300,000 euro, and then a year later you have to sell it for 200,000, so you lost 100,000 and you didn't have time to sail, and you can't sell it because it takes time to sell the boat. So these are the two types of misconception. One obviously can look at even higher level, mega yacht charter and giga yacht charter, and dig deeper, find misconception there. But that's really for individual circumstances.
I would love to go a bit deeper into the service side of things, because maybe on paper, to the uneducated eye, two things can look very similar. But in your view, what separates a good yacht charter from a truly exceptional one that people never forget?
That's very individual, I would say, because sometimes we are all emotional, I don't want to call it animals, but emotional humans, where one day we can feel bad and then nothing's good. And another day we feel good and everything's fine, regardless of the boat, regardless of the crew. Sometimes it's also the people. I am quite involved in terms of mind development and managing your thoughts of positive thinking at the moment. And I think one specific crew gave me feedback last year, and they said they had about 20 charters. It was a 50-foot luxury catamaran, so the cost is between 15 and 20,000 euro a week. And they said there's only two types of clients. One who are satisfied with everything, whatever. They don't mind the boat, they don't mind the service, they don't mind the food, they don't mind the weather. And the other type of clients, they're not satisfied with anything. They hate the boat. They don't like the cabins. The food is not nice. This is expensive, and that's where the attitude of people comes in play. Now, what's the difference between a good charter or a bad charter and an amazing charter? That's something that nobody can measure. That's something that is individual to the circumstance. I'll give you an example. A Swedish family that sails with us regularly, maybe twice a year. Sometimes they bring additional friends, so they charter 2 or 3 boats from Stockholm. They have sailed with us from probably 2010, starting in Belize, and then they've sailed all across Caribbean and Mediterranean by now. I don't even remember what boats and so on, but usually they charter between 50 and 80-foot catamarans or monohulls with crew. But a few years ago, they chartered a 70-foot catamaran, and they cried. They all cried. They loved it. And they specifically pointed to the crew. They said the crew made it special. The boat was excellent, the Balearic, Spain trip and so on, but the crew made it special. And they cried, and they thanked me, Eldin, you did so many special memories for us, and we had amazing sailing holidays everywhere from here to there, but this one was special. We all cried. Our kids didn't want to leave. Now, I've sent another British family to the same boat a year later, and they hated it. They didn't like it. They don't want to go sailing anymore, in a way, because and I don't want to now say that these guys are good ones and these are bad. The reason they didn't like it is because the boat was, let's say, a bit outdated. It was almost 10 years old. Now, the family crying didn't really make any fuss about it. But this type of client didn't like the fact that the boat didn't have an awning cover on a flybridge, meaning that if they spent days or most of the day outside, it was too hot for them. Now, the captain removed that awning on instruction of the owner, and because it's kind of open air area, there is no air condition there. And when I called the captain, I asked him, why did you remove the awning? He said, I had to because the owner demanded it. But these clients, they need it. Oh, Eldin, they spend 99% of the time in the cabins inside because of the air condition. Even when the awning is out, it would still be warm. Nevertheless, they complained. They weren't happy. And it's in a part because of the crew service or removing the awning. Now, you can say that 99% of the other things were fine. The food, the itinerary, the location, even the boat. It's just the awning was not there. And people were suddenly not happy, or the charter was not good or was bad because of the awning, sun awning. Simple thing.
I can imagine that you get all types of different briefs and on this topic of what's good for one can not be good for another. But when it comes to briefs that you've had to deliver on, more specifically, more challenging ones, can you talk us or unpack us through maybe one of the most challenging briefs that you've had to meet, and maybe what it took behind the scenes to really pull through and make it work?
There were many of those. I mean, one of the first ones was like Carlsberg, a Danish brewery company. They wanted a 100-foot super yacht in Mallorca for some kind of branding event, and they run a tender for it. And when I won the tender for that, I was like amazed because I was only one or 2 years in business. How did I win the tender from a major brewery? It took a lot of effort, and it was a good experience. And you wonder, how did you do it? Now, that leads me to another one. We have many clients now wanting to experience transatlantic crossing. So they want to, but they're not sure. So they want to first meet the crew and sail on the boat in the Med for a week. And then, next year I want to sail with them on the boat. Now, combining a boat that can offer luxury Mediterranean charter and then next year go crossing, it's very difficult because the crew might change next year. The boat might not go across the Atlantic anyway. But then offering the suitable boat for the client in the Med in the first place and then promising them that it's going to be available next year, it's a very big challenge. It's like, only 2% of the boats will do that anyway, and now you have to find out of 10 boats that will do it, one that will combine both. It's a very tricky issue because you can't promise people something that you will not deliver on. However, one of the biggest challenges was like 5 British gentlemen asked me a few years ago, and they said, Eldin, we want to go from Barbados to Panama, San Blas. And I was like, how do you want to do that in 3 weeks? It doesn't matter what it costs. It doesn't matter what boat you can get, as long as it's within certain range, like let's say less than 100,000 and around 60-foot sailing luxury catamaran, find us. I was like, no boat does it. Who's going to go that kind of 1,000-mile distance? Eldin, we believe in you. You find us. And I was like, okay, it gives you this kind of, if a client says we believe in you, we want you to find us, then it gives you this kind of impetus, like, okay, you are my clients. You did charter with me for a couple of years. I want to keep you. If that's what it takes, I'll find it to you. And you find that one single boat, and the reason is why they want to do it is because there's a specific world race that does that route from Barbados to San Blas. And because they're sort of seasoned sailors in advanced age, they haven't really had the courage or money or time to do their race around the world. So they want to follow it in stages. So they this year, not this year, 3 years ago. So they did Barbados to San Blas in Panama through Bogota, Colombia. Again, out of million boats, only 1 or 2 will do Bogota, Colombia because it's risky or can't be insured. And then the next year they said, okay, this is the route we did. Now we want to do San Blas, Panama to Galapagos. Right? And now that's even more difficult because you have to cross the Panama Canal. You have to deliver the boat from even Europe or Caribbean to Panama and then across to Galapagos and then return the boat back. It's like impossible. And you have to satisfy the budget. You have to satisfy the crewing. They want a chef on board. They want good wine. They want luxury boat. They want qualified skipper, ideally the one that was with them last year or not the one that was with them last year. It depends what the client wants, and you have to kind of really dig deep, and that's where you lose your hair as a broker. You kind of like, oh my god, I'm going to do this. But in order to survive in this business, in order to be let's say good broker, and keep going, you have to kind of sometimes scratch your head and roll your sleeves and do something new. Because most of the charters are like 1 week from, I don't know, from Nice to Monaco, or from Athens to Mykonos, or from one side of Mallorca to the other side of Mallorca, and so on. Finding these unique specialties, it's very, very difficult, very complex, very demanding. But it can be done.
You're living proof that it can be done.
Yeah.
You are. I want to touch on, you mentioned that there was a family that bought and then they couldn't sell it. And I want to talk about, are people still buying boats these days? And if so, how do you guide them and help them to decide if purchasing is the best route for them or if chartering is the best way to stay there?
I mean, in simple terms, people who buy boats, they know that they want to buy the boat. They have the passion for ownership, and in many cases, they can do it themselves. They don't necessarily need a broker. They just need to know what their budget is and what the boat they want. It's like when you go buy a car. For them, it's like, I'm going to buy a boat. Now, where it comes that the broker needs to help and assist them is where they need to research the market, where they're not sure about the value, about how they're going to recoup some of the costs. Can they charter the boat out to other guests so that they can, instead of paying, I don't know, whatever, 10,000 or 100,000 a month for crew or servicing or insurance, so they can rent the boat out to other people to kind of pay for those costs. We advise them based on starting point is, when do you want to buy it? When do you want to take the boat over? Is it this year? Is it next year? For example, if you want the boat for this season, you have to already plan and kind of lock in the boat now, because it takes several weeks for the survey, for memorandum of sale to take shape and form and exchange the contracts. You can't wait June or July, otherwise you're not going to see the boat in time for your holiday. Now, if you're looking for a specific brand of a specific deal, we can recommend them something that's going to be starting to be built this month and then will be launched in 2028. Now, do you want to wait 2 years for a boat? It might be worthwhile for somebody. out there, depending on their budget, depending on the type of boat they want, it might be worthwhile waiting a couple of years. And there are other people who come up to a broker to say, I have a brief that I want to satisfy, and this is something, you know, dreamy for them, you know, for anybody. No shipyard has ever done it. They start with something like, I want to have a new type of propulsion, like hydro energy, fuel cell, electrical engine, or whatever, you know, on my boat, because I want to have the least environmental impact the boat can have. Otherwise, I'm not going to buy something that runs on diesel engines. That's one requirement. The other one is like, I want to have it this long. I want it to have this wide. I want it to have this level of equipment. And then you have to kind of think about which shipyard can actually deliver on that. Because if they want the boat in this year, there has to be already a project going on that might actually convert towards the specification the client want. Or if they are happy to wait 5 years, then you can approach specific shipyards to ask them, would they like to accept that project? Some clients have their own idea who the shipyard should be, and they just want a team behind it with a broker in front to organize it as a project manager and deliver on it. So it's really kind of depending on the budget. You know, some clients just go to Norway, pick up a old 30, 40-year-old 25-foot sailboat, buy it for 20,000 euro, and then come to UK and sell it for 30,000 euros. You know, now if that's the brief they want, we can deliver on that level. Now the other guys are looking for something different. So it all depends. The starting point is, when do you want to have the boat, and then the next is probably the budget, and then within that you start researching.
Okay, and for someone listening to this who's intrigued to maybe get started with their first yacht charter but has never taken that step, what would you say to them? And what do you think they should know before jumping in and taking that first step?
In most cases, we say, do you have children with you? Because the safety of guests is most important. And depending on the age of children, you then make a decision of what to recommend. But in general, it all leads down to easy sailing area and a difficult sailing area. If you are sailing, for example, in the Mediterranean, you don't want to send people to Greek Cyclades between Crete and Santorini. It's a no-no. It's a very difficult sailing area. Even experienced sailors don't necessarily want to go there, because it can be very windy, it can be very heavy seas, very difficult to sail, and there's no point sending a new charter family there. You would consider sending them somewhere like Greek Ionian with a qualified and very experienced skipper, so that they avoid certain period of time where, you know, there might be, let's say, stronger winds there too. But in most cases, Ionian is relatively easy sailing area. The same thing, you don't want to send them to Sardinia or North Sardinia, because there's lots of underwater cliffs, potential dangers there. A new family might damage the boat if they start sailing themselves. You would send them maybe to somewhere like in Croatia, where there's lots of islands and, you know, easy line of sight sailing, where they only sail 1 or 2 hours a day. They can see where they're going. They don't have to kind of navigate big time and plan to do. The same applies for somebody who needs the crew, or a luxury yacht or a super yacht. You would not necessarily send them to difficult sailing areas, to easy sailing areas. Those would be like parts of Croatia, Greek Ionian, or in the Caribbean, you would go start with Virgin Islands. You wouldn't send them to maybe Panama or Grenadines, where it's more difficult and longer sailing distances, and where you have to navigate and with the crew worry about, where am I going, because I can't see the island, and so on.
Okay, so you said one of the misconceptions is that people think that it's maybe not attainable, unreachable for them, but can you break down maybe in a low and then mid and then high, what would be the price points for all these different boats?
Starting point for a family could be as low as, I mean, let's call it fairly and squarely, if they are sailing themselves, average maybe only 2,000 euros a week. Now, if you're talking about a more luxurious boat for themselves at a higher peak season, that €2,000 might turn into €5,000 a week. And if you're talking about highest end of bareboat charter yachts, that might even be 10 to 15,000 euro a week, depending on the boat, depending on the age of it, depending on the size of it. Now, when we're talking about the lowest entry, when I said that yacht charter can be cheaper, if you have a 50-foot sailing boat with 5 cabins for 10 people, and you're sailing sometimes end of June or early July, that might cost only €3,000. So if you have 10 people, that's €300 per head. Now, if you go 7 days to a hotel, it will cost you €500. Now, the other €200 are for the captain, for the expenses of the boat. So you're still spending €500 a head, but you are sailing. You are experiencing many, many other things that you would not be on a 3-star or 4, even 4-star hotel. The next level to that would be something called luxury charter or luxury cruise charter. This would or can start from as low as €10,000, where you have a captain and even a hostess on board. Slightly better or newer or bigger boats would then cost 15 to 20,000 euros. Proper luxury yacht charter then probably starts at around 30,000 euros, where you have a dedicated chef and a hostess and a, let's say, higher end captain on board and so on. And after that, you would start looking at super yacht charter, which might start at 50,000 euros a week, and then beyond that, which is probably something around 150 foot and plus, you would start spending hundreds of thousands of euros. And latest term we use is giga yacht charter, where boats cost €1 million per week plus. The most expensive boat on charter is costing €3.5 million plus VAT, plus all the expenses, which might be another million per week. And there's another boat being launched just next month, a 720-foot sailing boat for 100 guests. But this is more like a mini cruiser rather than a private yacht for 100 guests. And that costs €5 million a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned super yacht. I want to dive into that super yacht experience. It's a term I've heard before. Can you unpack that? Tell me a little bit more what that entails and how it looks.
Super yachts are usually defined boats above 24 meters or sort of 80 foot. They have to go through more rigorous checks and registration and insurance processes. And this is kind of the point where everything changes. It's so complex that a lot of people buy below 24 meters just to avoid the complexity of registering a super yacht. And in terms of super yacht charter, this is where you probably add 5th crew on board, like a dedicated engineer, before you have already dedicated deckhand and chef and steward or stewardess, and obviously a chef who at a higher end of super yacht charter might be a Michelin star trained chef. And then if you start adding 6th crew, 7th crew, then obviously there'll be more than 24 meters. That'll be closer to 30 meters and then 35 meters and so on. And I would say every meter of a boat might cost €10,000 more. It does not necessarily mean that it's true, but you can consider that a 30-meter boat might cost, let's say, €80,000 a week. A 31 might already cost €90,000 a week. If they launched recently, that might be a good guidance. Not necessarily true, but you can consider that to be somewhere in that range. And then super yacht charter is where you really have to pay attention to every detail. People are looking at escaping their busy schedules, and they want a coffee served at 9 o'clock in the morning, which has to be a coffee that they demand. The breakfast has to be served at 9:30 on the aft deck, not on the flybridge, unless they specifically ask the flybridge. They're going to meet on flybridge at 10 o'clock for maybe some business discussion or private family discussion, and that's where we want to have certain drinks served by the chosen crew. Lunch has to be served at 1, and It has to be the fresh catch of the day, because they're not going to have something bought off supermarket yesterday. They want to go to a specific location where whatever the local fisherman has on offer has to be served the same day on deck. And this is the level where we're talking. You might offer your own kind of family super yacht charter level of experience if you are a captain yourself and you can catch the fish, or you can buy it locally and cook it. That might be amazing too. But at super yacht charter level, where you're spending tens, hundreds of thousands of euro a week, you're expecting this kind of different level of service that is kind of managed, and it's written down in advance, and it has to be delivered on.
Wow, what a life, eh? What a life. I'm really curious about the red thread here. How did you get introduced to this world? How has this become your world?
That's I don't think I want to answer this honestly, but I will have to answer it in part honestly. I was basically a student with no money, and I was asked by somebody in Croatia, would you like to represent a yacht owner in London as a broker? And I was like, for what? For yacht chart? I was like, what is that? They said he's coming tomorrow to London Boat Show, and I was like, okay, so what do I do? Well, do you want to meet him? I said yes, because in my mind, my dream was like I want to travel and I want to kind of work independently for myself. But as a student with no money, with I was like, how do I do it? But you just had the courage to kind of jump on it and go for a meeting at the London Boat Show with a yacht owner who had 12 boats in his fleet, and I was like, what do I do? What? And it was scary thing, It was like I was sailing as a kid. We were holidaying in Croatian coastline, and we went on a sailing, on like 25-foot sailing boat across two islands. But as a kid, I didn't really participate in sailing. I was scared of winds and bad weather and open sea. So sailing is definitely not something that I was born with or wanted to do. But yacht charter just happened to come my way because I was dreaming about the job like that for some reason. And when you are working hard, studying and learning and wishing something, it comes to you in different ways than you're expecting it.
Inspiring stuff. And I just want to ask you one final question, something that we at Brains always ask
Yeah.
everyone. And I think you maybe touched a little bit on it there, but I'm curious to hear, what mindset do you credit most for your success?
I think there is no formula for any kind of success. Everybody can succeed in anything. We are all individuals. We are all capable of amazing things. We can achieve anything we want. I think it all depends on our attitude, on the effort we want to put in, on, I would say, in my case, on inspiration, because everything I've achieved in my life, it always kind of depending on my desire or inspiration. So if we are inspired to do something, or if we really want to do something, we can do it. It's just the question is how hard we're going to push and how successful we will be. Not that I'm successful as much as I want to be. I am successful at a level where I'm comfortable with. I don't necessarily want to do much more. I don't want to do much less. So I'm kind of where I kind of plan to be, or where I would like to be, is somewhere where I'm working hard towards getting there. Very difficult to say that, but in simple terms, I think it all depends on maybe environment a bit as well. What kind of support do we get? With the right support, I can achieve certain things that are simply not within my kind of level of achievement at the moment. But with a right support, I can go places that I've never been. And the same thing applies maybe to you. I mean, I don't know what your dreams are, but if you have the desire, which maybe I have, if there's inspiration, which I occasionally have, and if there's support, which I might not have at the moment, then who knows where I will end up in 5 years' time. And the same applies to you.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
that. It was really interesting to find out about the world of yacht charting and the different destinations and the process, and explaining all the different scenarios that you've been in. Thank you so much for that
You're welcome.
conversation.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.